Have you ever noticed how easy it is to get lost in the noise of life? Work deadlines, endless scrolling, social obligations, yet almost impossible to sit in silence with your own thoughts? Most people think maturity comes with age, but if that were true, we'd all be sages by now. The truth is, you can grow older without ever growing up, and one of the easiest ways to stay stuck is by avoiding the person you see in the mirror. Imagine this. You come home after a long day, and instead of sitting quietly for even 5 minutes, you reach for your phone, turn on the TV, or start cleaning things that don't really need cleaning. It's not just distraction, it's evasion. Because when you stop, when you actually look at yourself without filters or noise, something uncomfortable surfaces. Regrets, disappointments, that gnawing sense that you've been drifting instead of steering. But here's the twist. Most people think they're just tired or not in the mood to think about it. In reality, they're avoiding a confrontation with themselves. And every time you dodge that moment, you delay your own growth. Maturity doesn't start when life forces you to be responsible. It starts when you voluntarily face the truths you'd rather bury. If you've ever caught yourself avoiding silence, avoiding your own thoughts, you're not alone. But this is exactly where the seed of change begins. Because what you run from in yourself will end up running your life. Before we go further, I want you to do something simple. Remember the last time you felt deeply uncomfortable with yourself. No distractions, no noise. That moment you wanted to look away. Hold on to it. Because in the next few minutes we're going to explore why that discomfort is not your enemy, but your doorway. If what I'm saying resonates, if you've ever felt this strange tension between the person you are and the person you could be, hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. When was the last time you truly looked yourself in the eye? What if, instead of reaching for the nearest distraction, you stayed? What if, when the unease began to rise, you didn't mute it with music, a screen, or small talk, but let it speak? Most people assume that silence will only make the discomfort louder. And it will, at first. But here's the paradox. That same discomfort, if faced, begins to dissolve into clarity. Picture this. You walk into your home, close the door, and instead of rushing into the usual autopilot routine, you simply sit down. No phone, no TV, no background noise. At first, it's almost unbearable. Your mind races, unfinished tasks, mistakes from the past, fears about the future. You feel restless, like you should be doing something, anything. But then, the storm slows. Thoughts settle. And in that stillness, a quiet truth surfaces. Something you've been needing to acknowledge for years. That's the hidden reward of not running. You begin to hear yourself, not the version of you that performs for others, not the role you play at work or at home, but the you who's been there since the beginning. And that voice doesn't just point out what's wrong, it reminds you of what matters. Imagine the impact this could have on your life. Decisions wouldn't be made from habit or fear, but from a deeper alignment with who you truly are. You'd stop chasing every shiny distraction and start choosing actions that actually move you toward the life you want. Relationships would shift, because you'd no longer be hiding behind masks. You'd show up real, unfiltered. This isn't a quick fix or some mystical ritual. It's a simple shift, from running to staying, from avoiding to facing. And every time you choose to stay in that uncomfortable moment, you're building something priceless, inner stability. So I'll ask you, what would your life look like if, starting today, you stopped running from yourself? Can you picture it? Living in a way that's led by truth, not avoidance? That image you just formed in your mind, that's not fantasy. It's a possible future. And the first step toward it is simply to stay. There's a popular belief that time heals all wounds. It sounds comforting, but it's only partly true. Time can numb, time can bury. But if you keep avoiding yourself, time doesn't heal. It hides. And what's hidden doesn't disappear. It festers. Maturity is not about how many birthdays you've had. It's about how willing you are to stop believing the lies that keep you comfortable. One of the most dangerous lies is this: I'll deal with it later. Later becomes next week. Next week becomes next year. And eventually you wake up one day and realize that later has quietly stolen a decade from you. You've been waiting for the perfect moment to face yourself, But life doesn't deliver those moments with a neat invitation card. Here's another one. If I ignore it, it will go away. That's like saying if you ignore a crack in the foundation, the house will fix itself. No, it will keep widening until it demands your attention, usually in the form of a collapse. And then there's the most subtle lie. I already know who I am. You don't. Not fully. None of us do. And thinking you do is the fastest way to stop growing. Knowing yourself is not a one-time achievement, it's a lifelong dialogue. The moment you think the conversation is over, you've already started to lose touch with the truth. The problem with these lies is that they create a false sense of security. They let you stay in familiar discomfort instead of stepping into the real work. But here's the thing. Maturity requires rupture. It requires you to challenge the narratives you've been rehearsing for years, the ones that protect your ego but suffocate your growth. So ask yourself, which of these lies do you cling to the most? Do you delay? Do you ignore? Do you assume you already know? And more importantly, what would happen if you stopped telling yourself that story today? This isn't about self-blame. It's about self-confrontation. Because once you see the lie clearly, you can't unsee it. And from that moment on, every choice you make will either bring you closer to the truth or push you further into hiding. The idea that true maturity requires self-confrontation isn't new. Philosophers, theologians, and writers have been wrestling with it for centuries. St. Augustine once wrote, "Men go abroad to wonder at the heights of mountains, and they pass by themselves without wondering." He wasn't condemning curiosity about the world. He was warning that we often explore everything except the one landscape that matters most, our own soul. Centuries later, Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the horrors of the concentration camps, said that when a person can no longer change their circumstances, they are challenged to change themselves. Frankl understood something profound. Life's defining moments are rarely about external events. They're about whether we choose to face what those events reveal inside us. Even literature reminds us of this truth. Think of Dostoevsky's characters, how they wrestle with guilt, pride, and redemption. His novels are filled with people who only begin to change when they are brutally honest with themselves, often after a crisis strips away their illusions. Why bring these voices into the conversation? Because maturity isn't a trend. It's not a modern self-help hack. It's a timeless human struggle, one that transcends culture, age, and circumstance. When you hear the same message echoed by saints, survivors, and storytellers, it's worth paying attention. But here's the important part. These thinkers weren't interested in passive reflection. They weren't saying, "Just know yourself and you'll be fine." They insisted on action. For Augustine, it was the restless heart seeking truth. For Frankl, it was the courage to choose meaning even in suffering. For Dostoevsky, it was the willingness to walk into the moral storm and come out different. So the question isn't whether this principle works, it's whether you'll live it. Will you keep passing yourself by, distracted by the heights of mountains in your career, relationships, or possessions? Or will you finally stop, turn inward, and do the uncomfortable work that thinkers and seekers before you have already shown is the only path to real transformation? Because here's the truth. History has already left us the map. But the journey, the long, unglamorous walk into yourself, is still yours alone to make. There are forces at work inside you that you rarely notice. Patterns so familiar you mistake them for your personality. They show up in the way you respond to conflict, the habits you fall back on when stressed, even in the excuses you give yourself for not changing. These are not random quirks. They are survival strategies you learned long ago, and while they once protected you, they now quietly keep you from growing. Take avoidance, for example. Maybe you learned as a child that it was safer to stay quiet than to speak up. That silence helped you back then, but today it stops you from having the conversations that could change your life. Or perfectionism. Perhaps it once earned you praise and approval. Now it paralyzes you, making you fear starting anything you can't guarantee will be flawless. The danger is that these patterns run on autopilot. You don't even realize you're following an old script. And because they feel so natural, you might think, "That's just who I am." But that's not who you are. It's who you became to survive. There's a difference. Here's the catch. You can't change a pattern you can't see, and you can't see it if you keep avoiding honest self-examination. This is why staying busy is so seductive. It keeps you from noticing the subtle loops you're trapped in. You tell yourself life is just hectic right now, but in truth, the chaos is convenient. It keeps you from having to ask hard questions. Recognizing these patterns is uncomfortable because it means admitting that some of your strongest habits are no longer serving you. But it's also liberating, because once you name them, you can choose differently. You stop being a prisoner of your own history and start becoming the author of your next chapter. So think about it. What behaviors in your life feel automatic? When you get stressed, hurt, or uncertain, what do you do without even thinking? And here's the deeper question. What would happen if you paused in that moment and chose the opposite? That single act of noticing could be the crack in the wall you've been looking for, the first glimpse of freedom from the invisible prison you didn't even realize you were in. Sometimes the most transformative ideas can fit inside a single sentence. The kind that lodges itself in your mind and refuses to leave. The kind you hear once and then, whether you like it or not, it starts to change you. Here are a few I've learned the hard way. You cannot outgrow what you refuse to face. No amount of distraction, achievement, or reinvention will free you from what you keep hiding. It will always find a way to catch up, through burnout, broken relationships, or a deep, restless dissatisfaction. Comfort is often the mask of decay. We like to think that comfort means we're doing well, but sometimes it's just the sign that we've stopped stretching, stopped questioning, stopped becoming. Comfort can be a subtle kind of dying. Avoidance is not rest. Rest restores you. Avoidance drains you. One makes you stronger, the other leaves you weaker, even if it feels like a relief in the moment. These phrases aren't magic. They don't fix anything by themselves, but they work like seeds. If you keep them in mind, they start to grow into choices, and those choices grow into change. The danger is that we hear lines like these, nod in agreement, and then go back to living exactly the same way. The reason these sentences cut deep is because they are simple enough to remember, but sharp enough to confront you when you're slipping. That's why you need to carry them with you. Repeat them in moments when you're tempted to hide, when you feel the pull of the old patterns we talked about. So here's my challenge. Choose one of these sentences, or create your own, and let it become your quiet accountability partner. When you find yourself drifting into avoidance, let it be the voice that says, "No, you've done that before and you know where it leads." Because sometimes, one clear, uncompromising truth is all you need to stop yourself mid-escape and turn back toward the person you've been avoiding for far too long. Here's the strange thing. The more you run from yourself, the heavier you become. But the moment you turn around and face what you've been avoiding, the weight begins to lift. It's almost counterintuitive. You'd think that confronting your fears, flaws, and failures would make life heavier. In reality, it's the avoidance that chains you down. Maturity lives in this paradox. What feels like it will break you is often what will free you. And what feels safe and painless in the short term is often what keeps you trapped for years. Think about courage. Most people imagine it as the absence of fear. But courage, in its truest form, is walking straight into fear, with your eyes open, knowing it might hurt, and doing it anyway. Facing yourself is the same. You don't wait until you feel ready or strong enough. You start while you're trembling. The other side of this paradox is equally surprising. Facing yourself doesn't always lead to pain. Sometimes what you discover is gentler than you imagined. You might expect a storm but find a quiet understanding instead. You might brace for judgment and meet compassion. You might discover that the parts of yourself you've labeled weak are actually the very places your strength was born. Avoidance robs you of these revelations. It tells you that what's inside is too dangerous to see, when in reality what's inside is the very material you need to build the life you want. So here's the truth. You cannot become fully alive without being fully honest. And honesty with yourself will always demand that you step into places you've avoided for years. Yes, there's risk in doing that, but there's a greater risk in never doing it at all. Because the real tragedy isn't discovering something painful about yourself. The real tragedy is living your whole life, never knowing who you truly were. And that's a loss far greater than any discomfort self-confrontation could ever bring. When people think about facing themselves, they often picture a grueling emotional battle, a process full of tears, guilt, and uncomfortable truths. And yes, there will be moments like that. But here's the part no one tells you. There is also a deep, quiet reward waiting on the other side. That reward is a kind of inner solidity. The noise of the world still surrounds you, but it no longer drowns you. You stop needing constant validation from others because you've learned how to stand on your own approval. You stop fearing every moment of silence because it no longer feels empty. It feels like home. And there's something else. Relationships change. When you're no longer hiding from yourself, you stop performing for others. You begin to speak honestly, listen deeply, and show up without the exhausting weight of pretending. The people who love you will notice, not because you suddenly become perfect, but because you become real. Life itself feels different. Problems don't vanish, but they lose their power to control you. Challenges stop being threats and start becoming tests, opportunities to prove to yourself that you can act from truth instead of fear. Even failure shifts in meaning. It becomes feedback rather than a final verdict. This is the kind of maturity that can't be faked. You can't buy it, download it, or imitate it convincingly. It's the product of earned self-knowledge, the result of sitting in that uncomfortable space until you've learned what it had to teach you. And here's the beautiful irony. Once you have this inner stability, you realize it was never about becoming someone else. It was always about stripping away the layers of avoidance and noise so you could finally see who you already were. That's the reward. Peace. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped fighting the truth of who you are. And once you've tasted that peace, you'll wonder why you ever spent so many years running from it. If we strip this entire conversation down to its essence, there's a simple but profound framework holding it together. One that psychology, philosophy, and even history quietly agree upon. It's the threefold movement of awareness, acceptance, and action. Awareness is the first and most difficult step. You cannot change what you cannot see. This is where you choose stillness over distraction, honesty over comfort. It's standing in front of the inner mirror and refusing to look away, no matter how inconvenient the reflection. Acceptance is not the same as approval. It's the willingness to acknowledge reality without twisting it into something prettier or easier. It's saying, this is where I am, this is what's true, even when that truth hurts your pride. In philosophical terms, it's what the Stoics called amor fati, the love of fate. Not because every part of your story is pleasant, but because every part of it can be used for growth. Action is where transformation begins. Awareness without action becomes endless self-analysis, and acceptance without action becomes resignation. Action means making choices aligned with the truths you've uncovered, choosing the hard conversation over polite silence, the discipline over the excuse, the present moment over the endless postponement of later. Viktor Frankl's logotherapy rests on a similar idea. That meaning is found not in avoidance of suffering, but in how we respond to it. The choice to act from clarity rather than fear is where dignity lives. This framework is not a one-time process. It's cyclical. You'll revisit it every time life confronts you with a new truth. Each pass through the cycle makes you less reactive, more anchored, and more capable of meeting reality without flinching. And maybe that's the real definition of maturity. Not perfection, not the absence of mistakes, but the capacity to meet yourself again and again, with eyes open and heart willing, and still choose to move forward. The truth is, you don't need more motivational quotes or clever hacks. You need a way of living that refuses to let you hide from yourself, and this framework, repeated over a lifetime, becomes exactly that. At some point, every conversation about maturity has to stop being theory and start being personal. This is that point. Because none of this, no quote, no framework, no insight, means anything unless you decide to face yourself today, not someday. Here's the truth. You already know which part of yourself you've been avoiding. It might be a regret you've never voiced, a fear you've never challenged, or a flaw you've quietly justified for years. You don't need more time to think about it. You need the courage to turn toward it, and you're not turning toward it to shame yourself. You're turning toward it because growth lives on the other side of that discomfort. Every honest step you take toward yourself is also a step toward the people you love, toward the life you actually want, toward the kind of peace that distraction can't imitate. Maturity isn't a finish line you cross. It's a way of living. It's refusing to be a stranger to your own soul. It's building the strength to carry both your light and your shadows without running from either. And it's choosing, again and again, to act from truth instead of fear. So here's what I want you to do. Tonight, before the noise of the world pulls you away again, give yourself 5 minutes of real stillness. No phone, no TV, no music. Just you, your thoughts, and whatever rises to the surface. Notice it, name it, and take one small action, any action, that aligns with what you find there. Then come back here and tell me, what did you discover in that silence? Share it in the comments, not just for you, but because someone else reading might need to know they're not alone in this journey. If this conversation has spoken to you, if you've felt that pull toward honesty and away from hiding, hit the like button, subscribe, and join this space where we keep choosing the harder, truer path. Because the moment you stop hiding from yourself is the moment you finally start to grow. And that's a decision only you can make right now.